astronomical fall. And the forecast certainly feels reflective of that. It feels much cooler than it did for the first half of the month, where we started meteorological fall September 1st. Slowly but surely, those more cooler temperatures are taking over. We're seeing that this morning. It is single digits across many communities. This is the first time so far this month this has happened. 7 in Edmonton, 8 in Regina, 2 for Thunder Bay. That's it. 5 for Halifax, 7 for Fredericton, and 8 in St. John's. Elsewhere, it is a really mild start to the day. 17 for Toronto, 17 in Montreal, 15 in Ottawa, but not seeing a big warm-up across the lower Great Lakes, eastern Ontario, and southern Quebec. And that's due to the fact that rain is moving its way through. Now, later on today, many communities will peak in the high teens. That is fairly typical for this time of year. It's going to feel a lot colder because it has been trending above average for so many communities earlier in the month. Today, much more seasonal, but it feels drastically so, if I do say so myself. Many different areas dealing with rain this morning. The big one is going to be the lower Great Lakes, eastern Ontario, southern Quebec. We've got this front moving its way eastward, and with it, we've got some pockets of quite heavy downpours coming down at the moment. So this is reducing visibility. Sunrise isn't for at least another hour in many communities, but it is going to be dark even once that sun comes up if it is raining. And so that's going to make it a little more difficult to see outside. Obviously, if you're driving within the city, be watching out for pedestrians because it might be challenging to spot them as you're going through. Now, temperature-wise, it is going to be cool for the next couple of days due to the fact that this rain is moving through, more so in Quebec for tomorrow with the passage of the rain, and then across northern Ontario, many spots peaking in the teens for the next couple of days. Now, the rain, it swings its way eastward. Ottawa, Montreal, you stay fairly overcast, on and off rain throughout most of the day. For Toronto, for Hamilton, for London, for St. Catharines, you're going to see the heaviest rain now, and then it eases to showers later on. But we go through the next couple of days before you really see a full-on return to sun. Areas of northern Ontario, as we head into tomorrow morning, Timmins, the day starts off really sunny. It gets cloudier as the day goes on, and by evening, we're back into rain tomorrow night for areas right along Erie and Ontario, and then heading up toward Superior as well. That rain's going to last into Wednesday morning, and then slowly but surely move its way out. But that takes its time. It really isn't until Thursday before we start to see the sun come back out in full force. So be prepared. Next couple of days, a little more dreary, a little grayer, but we do need that precipitation. Coming up, we'll track all this into Atlantic Canada, let you know what you can expect to kick off your week. But for now, here's your local forecast. Welcome back. It's going to be a rather changeable week ahead, and you can see that right away just by looking at this map here. And how I see it, I'll give you a little hint, is whenever you see any sort of fluctuation in the lines here on the map, you know it's going to be a changeable week ahead. If we were looking at this map and it was like full-on rainbow, like just red all the way up to purple, kind of from here to here, and the lines were straight across, that would be what's called a zonal pattern, and it would mean really consistent weather. The fact that this map is all over the place tells you that the weather kind of follows a similar trend. The other big takeaway that you can have if you're at home watching this map is that areas underneath a big hill like this region of the Pacific Northwest is likely to see an extended period of drier weather. Areas that are seeing this big dip like this in our green line, so through northern Saskatchewan, parts of Manitoba, northern Ontario, seeing more changeable weather ahead. That's kind of the general takeaway. When we advance this map, you can see that this area, this dip, this is called an upper trough. This swings its way eastward, and as it does so, we see the development of active weather and the continuation of it in Ontario and Quebec over the next couple of days. In behind it, this big hill, this is an upper ridge, builds over Western Canada. We'll see temperatures here in this region of our country generally rise over the next couple of days. And you see it creeps its way eastward. And so that means eventually by like Thursday, Friday in Ontario and Quebec, we start to see a more stable weather pattern and temperatures begin to rise. We know it's going to be wet for the next couple of days in Ontario and Quebec, and then by Thursday, Friday, the sun comes back out. Now, for Atlantic Canada, you've got consistent consistent weather, but not necessarily consistent sunshine. This map here shows not a lot of cloud cover within the region, but as we flip over to our temperatures, you can see they don't really change for the next couple of days. And on this map here, this future forecast, there's some precipitation in the region, but not a lot of it by any means. I think today's the best chance for more clear sky. There will still be a fair amount of cloud in the extended forecast, and then possible fog for the next couple of days. But you see what I mean? Even as we go into Wednesday, there's not full-on clear sky and there's not full-on rain either. There's just mainly cloudy skies sticking around and consistent temperatures. So at least you know what you have today is what you'll have for the next couple of days. Now, coming up, we're going to take you through the rain that we have in Western Canada. We've got an atmospheric river setting up for BC, so I'll explain what that means coming up. For now, here's a look at today's forecast. Well, there are 3 areas across the country today dealing with rainfall. One is in BC as we see an atmospheric river push into the Pacific province there. We've got another area of precipitation happening through Saskatchewan, driving some fog and reduced temperatures in southern Manitoba and northern Ontario. And then this band of rain that stretches across Ontario and Quebec this morning, and it's bringing with it a lot of rainfall to many areas that have been quite dry so far this month. Now, we've got thunderstorms happening this morning right along the Trans-Canada in Saskatchewan, the Yellowhead as well. And then into BC, a lot of rainfall. Areas of the Central Coast are under rainfall warnings where by end of event, 70 millimeters of rain will fall. And the heaviest rain does end this morning. But as we look upstream, we've got a widespread atmospheric river. This is basically just like a funnel of moisture right into the region. And there's a large availability to it as we go through the next several days. And so we're going to see a very wet BC extended forecast. Now, what that means for British Columbia, wetter forecast there, drives a drier and warmer forecast for part of the week in Alberta as we see the development of a Chinook arch within the region. And that's going to drive really warm, dry winds across the southern part of that province. Calgary south toward the international border, Saskatoon south towards the international border, seeing generally drier, sunnier conditions over the next couple of days. We see a little more cloud creeping into the northern part of Saskatchewan and then into Manitoba and northwest Ontario as well. Now, as we go into Tuesday, you really start to see the beginnings of that Chinook arch. And this cloud right here, just off the Rockies, is indicative of that warm air moving its way in. That's driven by the southwesterly flow to what's happening in the weather, meaning the wind driving in weather from the southwest up toward the northeast. All of this rainfall in BC, see how it's coming in off the Pacific? Well, all of that spills over that wind into Alberta, and as it does, as it descends over the Rockies, we have what's called compressional warming. And so the air, as it descends, warms up faster than it cools down when it rises. And so while it's very wet in BC, it's the exact opposite happening on the Alberta side of the boundary. And some of that warmth will eventually push its way into Saskatchewan. Temperature-wise, it's going to hit the high 20s over the next couple of days in cities like Calgary, for example. Now, areas farther east are dealing with a lot of rainfall right along the shores of Lake Ontario, east of Georgian Bay, and across pretty much all of southwest Quebec. We have this heavy rainfall. Areas right along the boundary with Ontario and Quebec are seeing some of the highest totals. That's where we're hitting maybe 40 to 60 millimeters of rain. For cities like Toronto, for example, it is clearing over the next couple of hours, but be prepared for not a lot of sunshine until we hit roughly Thursday in the week. Now, in Atlantic Canada, let's go live to Patridge Island, New Brunswick. This view courtesy of the city of St. John. You see the sun is shining there. It's nice to see. Generally fairly clear across the region, but the next couple of days, the takeaway is consistency. This will be one of the most consistent forecasts across Canada all week long. Not necessarily the sunniest. We will see in the extended forecast that there's much more cloud. Today is likely to be the sunniest day with that cloud cover taking over for Tuesday and Wednesday, but the temperature holds steady, so at least you know what to plan for. Up next, speaking of not knowing what to plan for, well, it's like we hit the weekend and Mother Nature decided it's sweater weather, but only briefly, because as we go into the next couple of days in southern Alberta, for example, we'll see temperatures still hitting the high 20s. The mornings, though, yeah, they're a little cool. We've got single-digit temperatures right now in Edmonton and Regina, Thunder Bay, 2 degrees, so barely making it out of freezing, and then singles for portions of Atlantic Canada. Where it's milder this morning, it's also raining. 17 in Montreal, not quite raining there yet, but Toronto certainly is. 17 degrees, 14 in Ottawa. That rain kind of moving its way eastward as we head toward eastern Ontario. And then later on this afternoon, you see temperatures are a lot more September-like than they were last week. We are seeing that big shift in the forecast. Now, there will still be warm days mixed into the extended forecast pretty much wherever you are in Canada, but the stretches are shorter and they're less frequent in comparison to earlier this month as we really start to see that fall forecast take over. Remember, September, the first month of meteorological fall, acts a little more like summer. October, true on fall. Like that is like where we see the most fall-like weather. And then November's going to start trending a little more like winter as we go through the next couple of months. Now, this morning, lots of rain to talk about. We also have a brewing potential tropical cyclone. This one's sitting off the shores of Central America, and over the next both 48 hours and 5 days, this thing has a high chance of forming into something a little more organized. So we'll be watching that closely. The water's still very warm through that whole region, through the Caribbean, through Central America, up through the Gulf of Mexico. And that just acts like fuel. It would be like throwing gasoline on a fire. So it's really like fuel for hurricanes to develop into something a little more substantial. Here at home, we've got the rain quite heavy this morning, tracking its way out of the Toronto area, but still right along the lake there, up towards communities like Belleville, Kingston, Ottawa, seeing rain. Montreal, those showers just beginning to push in. That's going to be the case right throughout the day today as that tracks its way eastward. Now, the sun is shining now in Atlantic Canada. Temperatures really consistent for the next couple of days, but what will be different is the fact that the sun says goodbye and clouds say hello. And so it will be very overcast through the next couple of days in all 4 provinces. Coming up here on the show, good news about space ago, and it obviously is seeing or feeling a lot darker outside this morning, and that's part of this rain that's right on the edge of your screen here. Now, it is moving its way out of Toronto. It is moving right through Ottawa and into Montreal as it treks its way west to east. So moving its way eastward. If you're in the eastern townships, if you are in Quebec City, you can anticipate as the day progresses, it gets cloudier and then likely wetter. Now, Western Canada, same travel path for the rain in Saskatchewan. It is moving west to east. That means areas of southern Manitoba like Brandon, Winnipeg, you can anticipate that rain moving its way in. We've got some thunderstorms as well. Rain has just started in Regina. Thunderstorms that are kind of weakening as they approach Moose Jaw, but continuing eastward. So Regina, you're going to get another round of rain after that. And then for BC, we've got this rain into the interior and a lot of it falling along the central coast. Some areas will pick up as much as 100 millimeters of rain. When we zoom out, that rain, moving west to east, but when you look farther west, you see this line of clouds, and this band shows that we've got an atmospheric river of moisture just streaming right towards the BC coast. And so that means a long duration rainfall event. We're going to see some breaks where the rain will ease, but then it's likely to pick back up in the coming days. Now, while that's happening on the BC coast, it prompts Chinook conditions in southern Alberta. And so you start to see warm, dry air move its way in. By Wednesday, temperatures within southern Alberta are going to rise into the high 20s, low 30s again. And that's because of all of this rain set to hit Vancouver Island and the Pacific Northwest, south of the border. That will then drive Chinook conditions in Alberta and Montana as well. So east of the Rockies, seeing the same airflow, but it has rained all of its moisture out on the west side of those landforms. So on the east side, it is a lot drier. For Atlantic Canada, speaking of east, it is going to be super sunny for today in some areas. We will start to see increasing clouds, and the temperature is going to hold steady for the next couple of days, but the sky condition doesn't. We have this front that's tracking its way through Ontario and Quebec, and as it moves its way eastward, it kind of fizzles into nothing. So Labrador, you might get a few showers, but otherwise, we just start to see that cloud cover increase. Now, the tiny little green dots that you see here on the map, that's less indicative of rain and more indicative of like fog and mist, just kind of holding steady in the atmosphere. You really start to see the cloud cover push its way in off the Atlantic. We almost have a northeasterly flow, so the wind kind of coming in from the northeast down to the southwest, just pushing that cloud cover in. So keep in mind, it is going to be a gray week ahead, but not necessarily a super wet one. Now here's a look at your local forecast. What a fantastic interview. This morning, we are seeing that there's very changeable weather ahead right across Canada as our upper air pattern features this big upper trough swinging its way through portions of the eastern prairies into northern Ontario. Temperatures this morning are really cool. It's like 2 degrees in Thunder Bay to start off your morning. But in behind that, as we head toward the middle of this week, we get a big upper ridge building its way in. And that's starting first on the west coast, sliding through the southern prairies with this westerly flow driving really warm temperatures by Wednesday. And then as we head toward Thursday, it makes its way finally into areas on the eastern half of our country. So it means that while the week is starting off on a wetter note for some, eventually there are warmer temperatures ahead. Now, we are still following our Atlantic hurricane season. As we head toward the end of the month, typically this time of year, we start to see things quiet down. But we have a disturbance in Central America that has a really high chance over the next 2 days and into the farther outlook of the next 5 days of forming into something. Now, if this does, it will impact the region around it, possibly sliding its way up into the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll talk about that more as the week progresses. The rain that's moving its way eastward through Ontario and Quebec, this is really indicative of the next 3 days. Next return to sun across the region Thursday. Now, here's a look at your local forecast.